like to wish Dude Criswell a happy 95th birthday. Now, Dude was probably the biggest character of the Speedway world, although he was racing Class C at Ascot, and his father was a movie stunt prop guy, and there's just this huge history on the Dude. Floyd Eugene Criswell, it was his real name. And Malcolm Rowe, he sent me a lot of stuff regarding Dude Criswell. You know, there's not a lot of stuff written about this guy. And a lot of people don't really want to talk about him either because he had a fairly large criminal history, and he had a history of doing all sorts of wild stuff. We can talk about it. I'll share a couple of the stories. There's so many. But his father was a Hollywood prop person. They were living in Hollywood, and you know, Dude was just taught to like make a living however you could, whether it was legal, illegal, it didn't matter. And one time Dude's dad was producing, or actually providing, the prop for a movie, and his dad didn't have a certain car for the movie. So he told his son, Floyd, Dude, to go out and steal a car, and let's go ahead and put that in the movie. So Dude went out and stole the car and gave it to his dad so that he could do the movie. So I think his family was a little bit on the shady side. And so he was kind of raised without any kind of morals as far as like stealing, what's right, what's wrong. And he got into motorcycle racing, and he was kind of a pretty good racer. He raced at Ascot, and although he wasn't a top star, he kind of knew all the riders, and he was kind of involved in that. And back before that time, he was like getting arrested for all kinds of things. He was involved in many drug arrests, dating back to like 1954. And on one arrest, he was in his car smoking marijuana. And this is before marijuana was legal in America and California. And he got arrested for that. And what happened was he had sort of like a condom with heroin tied to his leg, and a lot of people thought that Dude was like getting arrested for marijuana, but actually it was a condom of heroin. He was dealing heroin, and you know, he got arrested for all kinds of frivolous things and a lot of drugs. And even car thieving. He was arrested one time for grand theft auto. They would steal these beautiful Mercedes-Benz in California, and it was a ring. There was lots of guys doing it, and girls, and they would go ahead and steal these cars, and then they would sort of change the VIN number and things, and also the registration. And they would go ahead and take these cars and ship them off to states in the East Coast and resell them and make lots of money. There was several people involved, and Dude was also involved in that ring. And he also got caught. They all got caught, and they served prison sentence. I'm not sure how many years Dude served in prison, but it was a long time. And he just did all kinds of stuff. And also he brought back the Speedway at the Whiteman Stadium in '68, and he got arrested for drugs before that time and after that time. But even though Dude was involved in these kind of activities that are really illegal, he was kind of a good guy in a way. He was he was like a promoter. He was a promoter. He was a fast-talking guy. He was handsome. He kind of looked like Burt Reynolds. And he was just, he could talk, and he was a wheeler dealer. And pretty much what Dude was all about was money. And he would even go race at the Whiteman Stadium and compete for the purse. And then so he was a promoter, and he would get money from the gate. And then he would go out and race and try to earn some of that money plus the promotion money. So Dude was quite the character. And he was a little bit shady, but people kind of tolerated him. And he does go down as the first promoter of Speedway. Some people think that of the revival of Speedway, I mean. Some people think that Harry Oxley and Jack Milne were the first promoters of the revival of the Speedway. But it was the Dude, Floyd Criswell. He brought Speedway back. Actually, it was Jack Milne and Harry Oxley who sat in the stands and watched the races at Whiteman. And Jack said, you know, I promoted these Speedway races back in the 40s. And let's go ahead and see if we can find a venue in Orange County. And they found the fairgrounds the next year. And that's how the Costa Mesa started. But those two guys, Jack Milne, the 37 world champion, and Harry Oxley, who passed away recently, rest in peace, Harry, they went ahead and they were watching Dude Criswell's promotions at the Whiteman. And they got that idea to start Speedway. And that's how it started at the world famous bull ring in Costa Mesa. But Dude Criswell, Floyd, he was the first promoter to bring back the Speedway and the revival in America. But getting back to Floyd, he was just a real crazy guy. He promoted races down in Mexico, Tijuana, bullfights in Tijuana. And he brought all those Speedway riders down to Tijuana, Rick Woods and all these guys, Greg Hazard and just all the top riders and the Bass brothers. And they raced down there, and they had it at like a school track, and they charged to get in, but there wasn't very many people paying, and there was a big hill by the racetrack, and all the Mexicans were sitting on the hill watching free Speedway. So when it came time to pay everybody, Dude Criswell didn't have any money. I think everybody got like $20 if they're lucky. And Dude, whatever little money was left, Dude took off and ran. But his car got stuck in the mud, leaving Mexico, Tijuana. And nice person like Sammy Tanner, he helped push Dude's car out. Maybe he didn't know that Dude was kind of ripping off the Speedway riders. But the racers went down to Tijuana and had this big event. There wasn't a lot of fans, I guess. The only time they had races in Tijuana. And I think from what some of the riders said, they got shaded a little bit of the money. And they only made like $20. That's for going down to Mexico and then racing and then coming back to California. So it wasn't very profitable for the racers, really. But Dude was involved in all kinds of stuff, you know, like just in his whole life. And he was arrested a lot. And he was a chain smoker. And of all the crazy stuff that Dude did, that chain smoking 30 years ago was what killed him, is the loss of breath and also tobacco. So that was kind of wild because he lived one heck of a life. He was in and out of jail his whole life. He was involved in selling narcotics, stealing cars, you know, smoking a lot of weed. I mean, the guy was, you know, doing shady promotions, but he brought the Speedway back. So we must remember that father of the revival of the Speedway, it was the Floyd Criswell, the Dude. And they called him the Dude because he used to ride around in this little cart thing called the Dude. I don't know, it was called Dude. Malcolm Rowe told me about that. He sent me a picture. And I don't know why he drove this little thing. You think he would drive like a little motorcycle. But I guess they didn't have those in those days. So he rode the Dude. So everyone said, Floyd, you are the Dude. And he was the Dude. There was only one motorcycle Speedway picture of Floyd. and that was at Whiteman Stadium. And he looked a lot like Burt Reynolds, and he just was really a character. Even though he did a lot of bad stuff in his life, like I mentioned, a lot of people did like him in a sense, and he kind of was popular and a fast talker, like most promoters are. And it was just a crazy life. And like I say, he had a turbulent life. It was unsettled. It was wild. It was in jail probably more often than out of jail. And he was racing the motorcycles at Ascot, and he got in with all the famous racers, and he was a pretty good rider himself. You know, dude wasn't a national champion, but he could definitely twist a throttle. You know, I guess that comes from stealing the cars and all running away from the police and all the stuff he did. So dude Criswell had one hell of a life, just like other Speedway people had a hell of a life too. And there's a book about Kelly Moran. It says One Hell of a Life, Kelly Moran. Although Kelly wasn't like dude, but some of these people had just a wild life. And dude Criswell was a guy that I had to really study about and see his life, because there wasn't a lot written about him. And like I say, thanks to Malcolm, he sent me some stuff. But dude, just like I say, he was really a rebel. And he had one of those lives that just none of us have experienced and probably never want to experience. Because dude was definitely just one heck of a crazy guy. But he passed away 30 years ago at the age of 65 from cigarette smoking. And that would be a horrible way to die, right? Is to like not be able to breathe and his lungs filled up with tar. So all the crazy shit that dude did, you know, it didn't get him killed. And cigarettes did him in. He probably would be alive or had just recently passed away if he kind of had a cleaner life probably. But he was a wild one, and I think no one was going to be able to tame the dude. So living 65 years was probably pretty good for a guy with that kind of lifestyle. But today we honor the life of the first promoter of the revival of American Speedway. We honor his name. He had a shady name, but I would have loved to meet him. I never got to. I was talking to Gene Woods. He met him when he was promoting the Victorville Speedway track, and told everyone has stories. You know, like with dude, he has lots of stories, and everyone has their own stories, but nobody wants to tell them. They're so incriminating and they're so colorful and wild that I think nobody wants to repeat exactly the stories that happened with the dude Criswell. But happy 95th birthday this week, dude Criswell. We honor the name of a rebel, a guy who had an extraordinary life of crime, of running away from police, of promoting Speedway, of racing motorcycles, stealing cars, selling drugs. He did everything. And he was quite the character. Like I say, he probably would have been a lot of fun to talk to. There's a lot of stuff that he could tell you, I'm sure. But dude was an incredible person. And we honor his name from Speedway as a promoter to bring back the revival. Lots of people are racing since that time of the revival to today. And we give thanks and we honor the name of dude Criswell because he's the one who brought the sport, the racing sport of Speedway, back to the U.S. And all the racers can thank who? It was Floyd Dude Criswell. Rest in peace. 95 years. God bless the name of dude Criswell.